And this curtain there, it's spelled with an A.
Yeah, you can get.
Is it sometimes spelled in here with
different versions. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the O'Connors.
O'Connors. Okay.
But then when you get the O'Connors back, you go back. The O'Connors come out of the Sept of O'Neill.
Okay.
So the Curtin came out of the Sept O'Connor. The O'Connor came out of the Sept O'Neill. O'Neill brings you back to BC.
Oh, okay.
We're back into 7,000 years.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And then where did the curtains end up settling mostly?
You basically have the Curtin is a Clare name.
Okay.
The most famous of the Curtins was a guy who lived in the southern slopes of the Cliffs of Moher, a townland called Carraduff, Killisboglanan, Biscanner, County Clare. And he was an Olive, a professor to the O'Briens.
She's an O'Brien.
Are you an O'Brien?
Yeah.
There you are.
On one side.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. So this guy, he would have been, in literary terms, the most famous. To be an Olive, you have to study for 20 years. That's a full Olive that sits on the right-hand side of the king. Right? You can be an Olive of poetry after 10, an Olive of history after 10, an Olive of music after 10. But you have to have 20 years study to be an Olive on top of the pile, which would have been able to wear the same colours, the same 5 colours as the king, and also eat the same pieces of meat as the king.
Nice.
Yeah, nice one.
Yeah, it's good work.
Yeah. So when you come out of a sept, basically what happens is if you're high enough up the order, you come out, you live under patronage, and you pay no taxes.
Okay.
So you have a specific functionality in the system.
Yeah.
Very high up.
And the Olive is the top of the pile.
Wow. Nice.
So the Curtins were the Olives too, the O'Connors, the O'Loughlin's, and the O'Briens. That's the 3 in this county. Yeah.
So even back then, your family was my boss.
That's it. Yeah. Now the O'Briens came out of Mara. The O'Brien dynasty came out of Mara Rua MacMahon, red-haired Mary MacMahon.
Okay.
And her castle is beyond Kilfenora, Limina Castle.
Okay.
That was her castle.
Yeah.
She was a proper kick-ass matriarchal lady. Back in the day, 6 husbands, 13 kids that lived.
6 husbands?
Yeah, 6 husbands. Yeah. She lived in a very difficult time. Land ownership was changing all the time. So her husband was at a battle. He came back dead on the back of a horse. She said to the manservant, "A dead husband is no good to me, get rid of him." And she took off and she rode into Limerick and she knocked on one of the doors and said, "I'll marry any Cromwellian lieutenant to keep my land." So that's what she did.
She got to take her right away.
She got to take her right away, and she ended up, her name then ended up with Dromolan Castle down
that's
yeah.
Wow.
So they had 330,000 acres of land at one stage. You should look up www.curtin.org.
Yeah, I went just briefly and looked at it. Yeah, so it was nice. And in fact, it looked like there was a thing that's keeping track of curtains today in the US and what
that's
they do
right.
and
You
stuff.
have a DNA thing as well.
Yeah.
You can also look up your ancestry.
Okay.
Margaret Curtin down in Gympsy, Australia, is the official clan genealogist.
Okay.
She has about 60,000 records of these Curtins and stuff like that.
So you can write to her and
You could email her. Yeah.
Email.
Yeah, you can just email. Because a guy the same name as myself, Peter Curtin, had a high precision engineering business in Waterford, worked with pharmaceutical corporations and all that, and he got his secretary to send out a letter of invitation to all Curtins in the telephone directories of Republic and Northern Ireland, and that came to about 5,000 people. Now that was in 2001, so there aren't many Curtins.
Yeah.
Like it's Kelly now. That name is big deal.
Forget it.
It's up at the top of the pile. Kelly's. Mick, where are we on the dollars?
There'll be 6 milk in total, Peter.
Okay, I'll be getting my psychologicals ready for that. Okay, I got you. So,
So yeah, 5,000. That's
Kelly's and O'Brien's. There's a lot of them.
yeah,
a lot of them.
Murphy's as well.
Murphy's, yeah.
yeah.
I was in Mexico in 1983, and in Mexico City, amongst other places, and for the fun of it, I looked up. There was 15 Murphys in the telephone books in Mexico
right?
City. There's a piece of useless information. This man is a speaker and a questionologist,
Questionologist, yes.
and he writes books and things like that. And his
Yeah.
name is Warren Berger. Berger. He's been doing talks to all kinds of fancy
But
Corp-
originally
corporations
from
and
the
all.
I'm from the Curtin family originally.
Oh yeah.
The Curtins in Kilmaley.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I am my one brother and myself. I was born up there back in 1953, literally up there.
Okay.
And my wife is from Sweden. Our eldest lad is Phelan. He's over in Sweden at the moment as a vet for a little while. He's a veterinarian. Then Roisin, the next lady, she's just come and visiting us. She's heading off to London. She's 27, and she's starting. She's doing clinical psychology.
Oh, okay.
And then Sarah is in Scotland, and now she's on her second degree. She's 23, and she's at the Glasgow School of Art.
Oh, wonderful.
Wow.
And she's in her second year, and she's playing around with 3 years of architecture coming up. And then there's John, and he's up at the house. He's gone off to a spike ball competition in Limerick, playing at Clare against Kerry, and he's 12. He'll be 13 next month.
Wow. Okay.
And
Great.
that's the most of us. And my
Yeah.
wife is from just south of Stockholm in Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, when you're ready, I'll look after you. Give us 3 anyway.
Yeah,
So that's
her,
that side
and
of it.
She's in the pictures of you. There's a
She
picture
would
of
be,
you.
yeah.
That's right.
You know.
Okay. Yeah.
So she heads up the smokehouse. She's a foodie person.
Okay.
She's a big persona in the food world.
Okay.
And I hang out in the pub. And then I started the Burren Brewery.
Yeah.
We have the beer that I think it's run out for the moment. Euphoria.
I tried last night. I tried your
Probably
stout.
the stout, was it?
Yeah, it was good.
It's
Very
really good.
Yeah.
In the American distance learning people, Cicerone, consider the Burren Black Stout in the top 5 percentile, as they call it, on the planet.
Oh.
Then we had a lucky stroke in that the Lonely Planet people, which is the largest guide in the world,
Sure.
they published a book last year called Craft Brewery Tours of the World,
Okay.
and 36 countries. Ireland, they picked 3 places: the Franciscan Well down in Cork, the Galway Bay in Galway, and the other one was the Burren Brewery at the roadside tavern.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So and now with this beer that is run out, that's a unique beer. I captured 3 wild yeasts.
Okay.
They're in the legal ownership of my lady wife over in NCYC in the UK, which is the Fort Knox of legally patented ownership of yeast strains.
Okay.
5,000 corporations, big breweries that have their stuff up. Collins Bar in Foster Street in the 70s.
Yeah.
She specifically said the imagery and the imagination for the book The Lord of the Rings is the Burren in County Clare. That's what she specifically said. So I won't say anything other than what is specifically said.
Right.
So Tolkien walked on the Burren quite a lot. He came down here with Professor Dermot Murphy and his wife.
Yeah.
Professor Dermot Murphy was the professor in charge of the English department that invited Tolkien to be the external examiner at Galway University in 1949, 50, 51 and 54. And they were lifelong personal friends. The only photograph in existence of Tolkien and the Burren was taken just outside Dr. Martin's residence at the bottom of the Corkscrew Hill over there. There's a copy of it over on the pillar over there. It was the only photograph that was ever taken of him in the Burren, and it was taken by a guy who got a first photograph from a camera that was of Miss Crow, the woman I met's nephew.
Right.
When he passed his final exams in English, his folks gave him a camera, and the first photograph he took was actually sponsored by Brigitte and my wife and myself. He's studying all the rest of it, and the name of the book will be Tolkien in Ireland, because his original biography Ireland was airbrushed out of it.
Okay.
So this is going to be a big deal. This will
And he
be
spent a lot of time here? Or what
a
was-
huge amount
Yeah,
of time.
okay.
And a huge amount of influence on the Lord of the Rings as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's going to be
Wow.
that'll be like the world was flat and we now think it's round and everyone, you know.
Yeah.
Because Tolkien was the most populist writer of the 20th century. So people have doctorates done and they have all kinds of assumptions made.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this will be a bubble bursting exercise.
That's great.
This is a famous coffee
Oh,
table
yeah?
book. There I am there, look. That's me.
Is that right? That's so funny.
That's it, yeah. It is.
You are full in it.
Yeah, that's me. It's
So when is that from? What year? What
that's
year?
in the 1990s.
1990s.
This is a photograph of me and my father outside here.
Ah.
With when I'm 19 years old,
hair.
an officer in the Merchant Navy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a guy called Jack Dulton. Took a photograph of me with the photograph. He's from North Carolina. He's a famous photographer.
That's great.
But I had some great fun with this.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah.
A day in the life of Ireland.
Yeah,
That's great.
That was Kodak back in the day.
Oh, okay.
They did a series. Very young, and he was a great friend of Steven Spielberg.
Oh.
His name was John O'Donoghue, and the first book he wrote became hugely popular globally. It's called Anam Cara,
Oh yeah,
Soul Friend.
I have that.
We have that.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
John O'Donoghue. That was
He
the
was from
first
around
book.
here?
He was from up the road here.
No
yeah,
kidding.
you'll be going in the direction of Ballyvaughan,
Okay.
and he'd be off the road about
wonderful.
2 miles, 2.5 miles.
That's a very popular book. Let's see that.
Yeah,
Let's
but
see
he
that
wrote
lot.
a few more books as well. But when he was on the global lecture circuit, he met up with Spielberg in LA, and he used to come here to the neighbourhood
Oh, that's good.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
But John died suddenly over in France, and he died young. And the American agent was in there not too long ago, and I think his estate was 6 million. Or something like
Wow.
that.